And Nitro's Garage for all your automotive needs. Call 646-675-2349. That's 646-675-2349. For all your automotive needs, Nitro's Garage. Ask for Jack. Elm Logistics for all your logistic needs. Call 631-299-3595. That's 631-299-3595. Elm Global Logistics. Pride, performance, and partnerships.
Dino Luzzi energy drink. Yeah, it's that good.
So we are actually, this is the first episode of the Ricco Ross broadcast / podcast called Stay with Mr. Ricco Ross. So first off, I want to know, my man, how'd you come up with that name, Stay Frosty? What does that mean to you?
Say again?
What does that mean to you, Stay Frosty?
Stay Frosty means stay cool, man. Keep your head level. That's what it means. It means like, don't panic. Because when you panic, you can often freeze. And when you freeze in dangerous circumstances, it can be a bad thing.
So that's a really important thing for actors to know when they're in the audition process. Be yourself. Don't let casting directors or producers intimidate you. Was that a pretty safe bet to say?
Yeah, I would even go further than say that when you go into an audition, this is your time to shine. And the two first words are really important. The first three words, I should say. This is your time to shine. So when you get in there, it's your time. You make the most of it. You prepare ahead of time before you walk through those doors. And when you walk through those doors, you got to keep in mind that no matter who's on the other side of that door, it's your time. I remember one audition I went in. I had just got out of college and I was going on this audition. And they called me in a number of times, and finally I was going to meet the big heads in Hollywood, the execs. And I went inside there and inside the lobby, and I'm waiting. And who do I see waiting in there? Also, I see a then young Lawrence Fishburne, And then someone told me, yeah, they flew him in from Chicago for this job. And I remember this role was a role where it was a gang leader, but he was the leader of gang leaders. So this guy was supposed to really have a certain amount of confidence, a certain kind of presence. And I walked in there and I saw Lawrence, and Lawrence hadn't done a whole lot of that time, but he had done the Army movie, which I can't think of the name of right now. And he had done that very young. And I remember seeing him in that, and he was amazing in it. So I walk in there and I see him in the lobby, and I hear that they flew him in from Chicago. And I thought, oh, wow, we're going up for the same part. Then I walk into the room, and there's like a dozen different execs in there. And as I walk in there, the first exec, I shake his hand. He goes, this is producer such and such. The next guy, I shake his hand. This is writer such and such. The next guy, this is assistant producer. And I felt myself getting smaller and smaller with each handshake. And then something in the back of my mind told me, you can't keep shaking these guys' hands, because all of a sudden you're becoming small, and you got to be the man in here. You're the man in here. They're not the man. You're the man in here. And so I stopped shaking the rest of the guys' head, and I started nodding my head to them and getting back to where I needed to be as an actor. And by the time we got to the last one, I was just going like, so. and so I do this audition, and I knew I had him. Because as soon as I finished the audition, everybody was quiet for about 3 seconds, and then they started commenting, saying, I walked out of that audition, and I remember thinking, I don't know who else they're seeing, but I know that I did what I was supposed to do. And that's your job as an actor. You only have so much control over the situation. And the one thing that you can control is what you do. So I walked in that room, and I remember controlling what I could control. And I walked out, and before I could even get home, I got a phone call saying, yeah, you booked the job.
So tell us your story, man. I mean, was there anybody in your family or any of your relatives in show business or the film industry? I mean, how did you actually get a knack for the film industry? How is that something that you knew? In what age did you know you wanted?
Let me put it this way. I come from a very large family. I have 5 brothers, and I also have 5 sisters. So there are 11 of us, 6 boys, 5 girls. My parents were not wealthy. We were a low-income family. And of course, with that many kids, you probably are going to be a low-income family. But I remember they stressed education, and my parents also stressed business. They wanted us to be a professional, no matter what it was. So most of my family went into business. Some went into to being teachers, but I kind of I got this thing for the arts, because when I was 13 years old, my parents divorced, and I moved to Florida, and I moved to a school to the South. And I'm from Chicago, and I didn't know a whole lot about the South, but I remember thinking that I didn't really want to move to the South. And I get to the South, and I get told that I'm going to go to a high school called Plantation. So I go to this high school, and the high school would have us come in the afternoon, and they had another student body that would come in the morning. And what would happen was there was another school being built that we were going to go to, so we were sharing this same campus. And as a kind of energetic, mischievous young man, I would try and get into the school. Yeah, I tried to get into school, and they wouldn't allow me. And this teacher saw me, and she knew that what I was doing, and she just told me, no, you can't come in. Then a little girl came up, and she says, oh, I'm sorry, I left my book in there. Can I go in and get my book? And she let her in. And so I, being a smart little kid, played the race card on her. And I said, oh, you let her go in, but you won't let me go in. And tried to make her feel guilty, tried to play the guilt card on her. But, she knew that I was acting. She could see it. And I had worked myself up so much that I had tears going down my face. And she says, no, I'm not going to allow you in this room. I know that you come in later. And but what I will do is I'll allow you to be in my play. And I said, I'm not going to be in your play. She goes, yes, you are. I go, no, I'm not. She goes, yes, you are. And then I confessed to her. I said, I'm not comfortable reading out aloud. She says, well, we do this thing called improv. So when you go in, You just can you play could you play a frog? Could you play an animal, a bear? I went, yeah. She says, can you be at and at the cafeteria tomorrow at this time? I said yes. And then she says, okay, well, you're doing my play. And she was right. I ended up doing her play, and I played a boxer. My father, one of the many things that he did when he was in Chicago was he was a Golden Glove boxer. So all of us boys, we knew how to box. So playing a boxer was really easy for me, even at 13 years old. The next year, she had a play, and I did that play. And then the following year, she did a play where I was one of the leads in the play, and it was really successful for the school. And once I got into college, after a couple of years of college, I decided that I had to choose my course of study, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I spoke with a counselor, and he said, well, listen, what are you good at? What do you like doing? And can you make a living doing it? I said, well, I think I'm good at acting because we got amazing reviews. I said, I like doing it. So he goes, well, why don't you do that? 2 out of 3 ain't bad. And that's how I became an actor.
Wow.
But I think that teacher knew, she knew that this kid had a lot of energy. She knew that he was smart enough and clever enough to be a good actor, but he wasn't fooling her. But she also thought he had skills, and she managed to put those skills and direct them into the right direction. So I thank Miss Cook for that, because she was the beginning of my acting career.
Okay. So how long the time you started on stage, that was your first stage experience, first acting experience, until you did your first professional?
Well, interesting story there is I became an actor, and after a couple of years, I felt like I really wasn't as good as I wanted to be. And so a professor at my university says, well, why don't you consider going to grad school? And I applied for UCLA, which was my first choice. And I was going to apply for other universities, but I had missed the date. So basically, I had one choice, and that was UCLA. I got a letter from them saying, we'd love to have you audition, but we'd prefer that you fly out from Florida to audition in person, because you'd have a better chance of getting a position. And so I scratched up enough money to fly out to California. I auditioned, I got back, and I waited. They said you'd hear an answer in a couple of weeks. A couple of weeks passed, I did not hear an answer. A couple more days passed, I did not hear an answer. And I called them up, and they says, oh yes, we sent it out yesterday. You've been accepted, and you've got a full ride. So this was, they offered me, instead of a scholarship, they offered me a fellowship where they would actually pay me to go to school if I kept a 3.0 GPA. So that was the happiest day in my life at that time. I remember I could not believe it. And I just hoped that they didn't make a mistake. And if they did make a mistake, that they didn't discover it until after I had actually graduated. So I get out there, and I go through the program. It was a 2-year program at UCLA. And I tell you, I am so indebted to UCLA. I feel like I should put a tattoo on my body, because they gave me an opportunity, 1, to get out of Florida, and 2, to start my career. By the end of the second year, I started auditioning, and my first role was I was a regular on Young and the Restless. And my second big role was Hill Street Blues. And Hill Street Blues, I had a recurring role on that, playing a gang member. And again, as I said, I'm from Chicago. I grew up with gang members. I could play those guys like I knew them like the back of my hand, so it wasn't a difficult thing to do. And so I did a good job at it. I remember I did 3 episodes, but like after the second episode, I bumped into this guy who had a big beard, and he had on a lumberjack jacket, and he goes, I was looking at some footage last night, and you were really good. You're a young actor, but you're really good. And I almost played the actor kind of attitude, like, oh, thank you, but I wasn't as cocky as I wanted to be, and as I could have been. But I was very happy that he gave me the compliment. And I later found out that he was the guy who created Hill Street Blues. So I'm glad I didn't make a complete ass of myself. But I did 3 episodes of it. That year it won more Emmys than it had ever won before. And that was really the start of my career as far as a leading man.
You actually did a early on in your career, man. You worked with the legend in the business, Lee Marvin. How was that experience?
Wow, that touches me because I worked with Lee Marvin on The Dirty Dozen 2, and I had seen movies of him when I was growing up, and to actually work with him side by side. That was such an experience for me. And as a young actor, I'm playing this role, this character, and I'm working side by side with Lee Marvin. And Lee Marvin and I became really good friends. And he had a daughter that was also out helping out. She was visiting, and her and I became really good friends. And I remember after the movie was over with, I would receive a Christmas card from Lee Marvin's wife for like the next 3 years. And he was the best thing that could have happened to me at that time, because there was one scene where I had a shot. I was a sniper in this movie, and Lee Marvin comes to get me out of jail because I'm so good, and to offer me immunity if I would come and do this mission. And I remember I'm living in England, right? And when I first moved to England, I moved there to study Shakespeare. And by the time I got this job, I had been working in England as an Englishman, illegally as an Englishman, doing English roles. And I had just booked this job, and I had to switch over and start thinking American. So we're doing this one scene where Lee Marvin comes to the prison, and he asks me, where did I learn to shoot? And I said at home, in the streets, basically what I told him. But instead of saying home, I was saying home. I was saying it with an English accent. And I remember the director kept saying, cut, something's not working. And we were shooting this scene over and over. And the reason it wasn't working is because I was actually pronouncing home as an Englishman. So we get on set later on, and we have this big scene, this kind of climactic scene, where I got Hitler in my crosspin, and I could take out Hitler, but my assignment was to take out his right-hand man. And so Lee Marvin and I get into this argument while I've got him in my sights, while I've got Hitler in my sights, whether or not I should shoot Hitler. And I remember we did the first take of this scene, and it was a long take. And I'm acting my butt off, and I'm doing the scene, and I'm killing it, and we cut, and Lee Marvin's asked the director to give him a minute, and he pulls me over to the side, and he says, listen, that was great, and I really felt that you were in the scene, but he says, this is a long shot. We're gonna do a number of takes of this long shot, then we're gonna move in and do a mid shot, and we're gonna do a number of takes of that, and by the time we get to your close-up, whatever you're using, it's gonna be spent. So he kind of coached me. He says, don't use it now. Whatever you're using is working. Just go through the scene, through the numbers. Just treat it like it's the numbers. It's a long shot, they're not that close up on you, and it'll work out fine. When we get our mid shot, you can start turning it on a little bit. But when you get your close up, that's when I want to see what you just did. And you can't repeat that if you start doing it now. And that was a bit of advice from a veteran actor that, that I would never have known this, because I grew up working more on stage at that point. And so all of a sudden I'm working on film, not even television, but film. And it was him schooling me at that point. And I always appreciated that.
So your very first film was a film called Scarred. Do you remember anything about that film whatsoever? Your very first time on set?
I don't remember much about Scarred. I don't. And as a matter of fact, if I look at some of these movies, the smaller parts, I don't even remember much about them at all. I would have to look at the movie to kind of remember it, because one of the things my acting coach said at UCLA, he says, listen, your job is to come to the set prepared, do your thing. And he applied this same concept to auditions. Do your thing, and when you walk out, you let the chips fall where they may. He says, because that's out of your control. You do what you can when you walk in there. And I got into a habit of going on auditions, doing my thing, walking out, putting that whole experience behind me, because I did not want to be that actor that's sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring. And when it doesn't ring, you become depressed and bitter. And if you focus on that, that will tear you down as an artist and as an actor very quickly. So I got into the habit of once I do the job, once the job is cut, there's a cut and there's a wrap and we're out of here. My focus then shifts completely away from that job and on to the next possible job.
I think a lot of times talent in the industry stop and reminisce about what they did and then get caught up in the moment. And that's a way that they kind of stay stagnant until the next gig or whatever that gig might be. I think that's a really sound advice that your acting coach gave you, that advice, man. Just keep doing what you do, get out there and do it and just go through it. Don't think about it, just keep moving. Yeah, that's really the best advice.
Yeah, it is. And I find it worked for me because in Hollywood, I meet a lot of actors, and a lot of actors are bitter. And they're bitter because of they come out here from wherever. They have these big dreams of being an actor or a star very quickly. And what you find happens is that it happens quickly for a very small amount of people. Everybody else, it's a struggle, man. It's a constant struggle, and it can wear you down. And part of the problem with being an actor in Hollywood is that when you're first starting off, your bills are coming every month, but the jobs aren't coming every month. So you have to do something just to pay the bills. And a lot of actors work as waiters or other jobs, but there are always jobs where there's a certain amount of flexibility. And if they get a job where someone wants to give them a better position, very often they won't take it because that better position means more responsibility. And I can't walk away for an audition as quickly as I can if I kept it down low. And so what you find a lot of actors doing is that they just do jobs that really are kind of beneath them. And before you know it, there's 5 years that have passed by, you're still doing that job. And now you're thinking about a family or something like that, or you want to buy a house, and you're still doing these jobs that really don't pay that much. And so it can be a very bitter experience. So for me, yeah, I tried to do what I can to kind of like keep my energy up, keep myself, my mind in a positive position. And so, yeah, so when I would go into a job, once I did my job or once I did my audition, that's it. That's the end of that. And now we'll move on to the next thing. And hopefully that advice will help somebody else.
So I know you went over to London, England for a couple of years, man. You actually lived in London. Is that something you purposely did? Did you want to learn like their style of acting compared to ours? Or how did you end up in England over there for the time you were there?
Good question. So as I told you, my first big job was Hill Street Blues, where I actually got to play a lead role. And then after that happened, every job for the next year seemed to me to be the same character with a different name. So I'm playing all of these gang members, right? And as I'm playing these gang members, I'm thinking I'm happy to be working, but at the same time, I had just finished grad school at UCLA. I'm walking around with a master's degree, and all I'm getting cast as are gang members. And I understood it because being 6'3" and athletic, you know, that's an easy role for me to be cast in. But at the same time, I felt like I had more to offer. So I went to one of my professors at UCLA, and I confided in him and saying that I really feel like I'm locked into this kind of stereotype of playing the same role, and I got more to offer than this. And his suggestion was that I audition for the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, i.e. LAMDA, It's a school, a Shakespearean school in London. And he says, this would be good for you for two reasons. It'll give you something to come back with that you'll have in your pocket that's different from all the other actors. But also as a young man, it'll be a good experience for you as a person. And as an actor, your experiences as an individual has a lot to do with the characters you create, the perspectives that you can pull from. So I auditioned, got accepted into this school, into Lambda in London. I went there. As soon as we got there, the Americans that were there, they asked us to acquire a British accent because they wanted us to be more time focusing on character and not so much time focusing on accent. So as an actor and putting in that environment, like a sponge, I just soaked it all up. And by the time the course was over, it was only a one-year course. My English was better than most of the Londoners. When the course finished, all of the English people were going on auditions, getting agents and going on auditions and starting to work. And I was just hanging out thinking, should I go back to the States right now? Or should I stay here and see if I can actually pull this off in front of an English audience? So I decided to stay there and pull it off. But the first thing I ran into was that I was an American, and it's very difficult for Americans to get a work. And so an artist often, when needed, I created my own, the equivalent of Social Security number. And I put on my best British accent, and I started walking into auditions as a British actor, and started working as a British actor. Now, I don't know if you can get away with that now with all the computers, but I worked for 4 years as a British actor in London, and I was able to pull it off and do Shakespeare in front of an English audience and a lot of other English televisions as an Englishman. And it wasn't until after 4 years that I managed to get my permanent visa. And so I ended up staying a total of 13 years. And I did, Doctor Who over there, which is a huge series that's been going on for generations. I did Aliens there, Mission Impossible there, Dirty Dozen, I did that there. A lot of huge movies I did there, and then I would fly back to LA for pilot season. And as soon as it got slow in pilot season, I would just back to London.
One of the things we're going to be doing with this this show is tracing your filmography and your lineage, like where you started to where you are now. So when you were in London, man, that's when you worked, I guess, with Charles Bronson on Death Wish 3. How did that come about?
Yes, when I was working with Charles, when we shot Death Wish 3 in London and in New York, and I was working with him, and he was going through a really difficult time right then. I think his wife was terribly sick or had just passed away. I can't remember which, but it was right around that time. And I remember he had invited me into his trailer, and we were just talking about the role, because in the movie, we are like arch enemies, and he just wanted me to feel secure that, when we're being physical and whatnot, this is just professional, and he's going to go at it like he's really angry at me, and then he wants me to feel have the license to go at him the same way. And so we're talking about this, and then I had heard that that his wife was going through some really difficult times, and I brought it up to him, and I could see the weight that he was carrying concerning his wife's health, and he really didn't want to talk about it, and instantly, I could see that this was a serious situation, and that he loved her very much. So we're shooting the film, and from that point on, we just did our thing. We were arch enemies in the film, so he knew that when I didn't want to hang out with him, and he didn't want to hang out with me, that it was professional reasons, because we're not going to be friends off screen, because we're not friends on screen. And as an actor, and also as an actor who often uses method acting as part of my training and my preparation, if I am a friend with someone on set, I try and find things about them that I enjoy, and try and find things that can make us more of a friend offset, so that when we get on set, there's a chemistry there that is real. And if we are arch enemies, then I often try not to be such a friendly person with that person until after we wrap. And so we kind of got that straight out, and he kind of explained that he works the same way, and so it was all good. But we had, I mean, that film was a very interesting shoot, because I remember when we were in New York, we went into a part of New York to shoot on location in the streets, and we were in an area that had gangs, real gang members. And some of them came up and saw what we were doing and saw us acting as gang members and wanted to be in the film. And of course, you can't just cast somebody just on the spot like that when you've already got people who are playing those roles. And they were not happy about it. They were also not happy about the fact that we're shooting in their hood and we didn't ask permission. And so things got a little heated, and at some point, it got so bad that we had to get on the coach. All of us had to get on the coach and change locations because they started throwing rocks at the coach. It was a crazy experience. But when you're working on location, you don't have control of everything. So that was a weird experience. And the other thing that happened in particular that I remember about that shoot was we went back to London and we shot a scene, and it was supposed to be in New York, but they had built this building that looked very similar to the building we were in New York. And this building they were going to set on fire. So they set the building on fire, and the idea was the stuntman who was playing me, who was going to get thrown over, because I get thrown over the building, over the edge of the building by Charles Bronson. They wanted him to fall over on these boxes, but the building was going to be on fire. And what happens is he runs up there and he does the stunt one time and it's fine. He comes down, he goes to do the stunt again, but the director, Michael Winter, says, listen, we're going to put more fire here on this one and really see if we can make it a little more exciting. And he did it a second time and that was fine. And then he goes on the third time, we're going to really light this building up now. I think we've got the shot, but let's just really light it up and see if we can make it more exciting. He gets up there and he goes to jump and he can't see where the boxes are. So he decides, I don't know where it is. I'm not just going to jump. He decides, I'm going to go back and abort this stunt. But he tries to go back downstairs and the building's so on fire that he can't get back downstairs. So then he runs back upstairs, and the only way out now is to jump. But now he can't see anything about where the boxes were, but he has no choice. The stuntman's name was Rocky, and he was a famous stuntman in London at the time. And he ended up jumping where he thought the boxes were. He hit half the boxes, and half of the boxes he missed. He broke his back, and that was, a horrible thing to happen to a stuntman, because you break your back as a stuntman, that pretty much is a life-ending, career-ending experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are actually at the end of episode 1 with Stay Frosty with your host, Ricco Ross. Episode 2 really soon, ladies and gentlemen. And we have a lot of great content we're going to be bringing to you. And we really appreciate your time today, Ricco. And we look forward to episode 2, my man.
All right, brother. Nice talking to you. And remember, as always, stay frosty.
You got it, my man. Peace out.